Today, we're going to dig into one of the most famous stories ever told. You know the one, the serpent in the Garden of Eden. But we're going to look at it through a lens that might just flip the entire biblical narrative on its head. So let's get right into it. Okay, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and start with the big, provocative question. What if that creature we've always been taught was the ultimate villain was actually playing a completely different role? Seriously, this one question is the key to unlocking a whole new way of reading the story. So here's the fundamental clash in ideas. On one side, you've got the view we all know, the serpent is Satan, the big deceiver, the trickster. But on the other side is this really radical claim. The serpent isn't the villain at all. Instead, it's a prophetic sign, a symbol pointing directly to the cross of Christ. Let's unpack how we even get there. To even begin to wrap our heads around this, we have to go back to the source code, the original text. The whole argument really hinges on the idea that the clues have been hiding in plain sight, in the original Hebrew words used way back in Genesis. So the word for serpent in the original Hebrew is nahash. Now this can mean the shining one or the whisperer. But here's the really critical part. The text in Genesis 3 never, ever calls this being Satan. That's an association that came way, way later. In the story itself, it's just the nahash. So, if the serpent isn't the adversary, then who is? Well, the text actually tells us very clearly. God says he will put Iva, which means enmity or hostility, between the serpent's line and the woman's line. According to this view, Iva is the true adversary. The enmity is the satanic force. The serpent is just the signpost. Okay, I can hear you already. But what about that famous line, "You will not surely die"? I mean, come on, that's a flat-out lie, right? Well, this interpretation argues that if you look at the context, it's actually not that simple. So let's think about this for a second. Humanity's first command, their prime directive, was to be fruitful and multiply. Their whole destiny was about bringing forth life. So when the serpent says, "You will not surely die," you can read it as a pointed reminder of that mission, that their purpose wasn't to just get wiped out. And remember, they weren't naturally immortal. They had to eat from the tree of life to live forever. So the serpent wasn't promising them something they already had. It was jabbing them about their divine purpose. All right, now let's move on to the curse God places on the serpent. The argument here is that this isn't a biology lesson about why snakes slither. No, this is deep, symbolic prophecy, from start to finish. God's curse on the serpent has three very distinct parts. Number one, to be cursed above the cattle. Number two, to go on its belly. And number three, to eat dust. Let's break down the hidden prophetic meaning of each one.
First up, curse it above the cattle. Now, the Hebrew word for cattle here is behema, and that's not just a general word for animals. It's actually priestly language for sacrificial animals. Think lambs, goats. So to be cursed above them means to be set apart as the ultimate cursed offering, to be lifted above all the other sacrifices. See where this is going? It's the first hint of someone being lifted up, bearing a curse.
Second, on your belly you shall go. The Hebrew word is gehon, which means the lowest part, the underbelly. This isn't just about slithering. Prophetically, it points to moving in the most profound humility and lowliness. It's a picture of the incarnation, right? Where Christ emptied himself and took on the form of a humble servant. And third, dust you shall eat. So, what is dust in the Bible? It's a symbol of mortality. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. So, to eat dust is to consume mortality itself. And this points straight to Christ, who the book of Hebrews says tasted death for everyone. He literally partook of our dusty mortal condition in order to conquer it. And now we get to the absolute heart of the argument. This is where that ancient prophetic sign from Genesis gets explicitly and powerfully connected to the cross in the New Testament. This is where all those threads finally weave together. Let's fast forward to the book of Numbers. The Israelites are in the desert, they're dying from venomous snake bites, and what is God's remedy? It's so strange when you think about it. He tells Moses to make a bronze serpent, a nahash, and lift it high up on a pole. The very image of the thing that's killing them becomes the source of their healing. And then, boom, Jesus himself makes the connection crystal clear. He says, just as Moses lifted up that serpent in the desert, he, the Son of Man, must also be lifted up. He is claiming that ancient sign for himself, identifying his own crucifixion with this powerful symbol of healing. The Apostle Paul just puts the final piece in the puzzle. He explains that Christ became a curse for us, and even quotes the Old Testament law that says, "Cursed is everyone who is hanged on a tree." So there it is. Christ is the one who is lifted up, just like the serpent, and bears the curse, just like the serpent was cursed above the cattle. But it's not just how he died that's significant. It's also where. The location of the crucifixion, Golgotha, is absolutely packed with theological meaning in this interpretation. Its name is a huge key. Golgotha literally means the place of the skull. Now, this isn't just a random geographical fact. The cross is planted in the skull because the mind is the ultimate spiritual battlefield. Think about it. God promises to put his law in our minds. Revelation says his name will be written on our foreheads. The cross being rooted in the skull is a powerful symbol of God's wisdom being planted directly into the human mind to overcome the enmity that lives there. Okay, now for the big objection, right? What about the book of Revelation? It explicitly calls the devil that ancient serpent. Case closed, yeah? Well, let's see how this view handles that. First, it's super important to remember that serpent and viper are used as metaphors all through the Bible. They're often labels for human adversaries who stand against God's plan. I mean, Jesus himself called the religious leaders a brood of vipers. It's a way of describing an adversarial role. So when Revelation talks about that ancient serpent, it doesn't have to be a direct reference to a specific snake in a garden. It can be understood as the ultimate embodiment of that ancient pattern of enmity, that Iva that has been working through people, governments, and systems that resist God throughout all of human history. So when you just step back and look at the whole picture, you can see this incredible, cohesive, prophetic pattern that stretches across the entire Bible. The sign is given in Genesis, it's lifted up in Numbers, it's claimed by Jesus himself in the Gospel of John, and finally, that sign is rooted at Golgotha, planting divine wisdom in the human mind. It's one singular, unbroken thread. And that brings us right back to where we started, with a huge question. If the serpent in the garden was never the villain, but was actually the very first prophetic clue pointing to the crucified Christ, how does that change the way we see the entire story of sin, sacrifice, and redemption? It's a thought that really does reframe everything, doesn't it?